What's up guys, Kyle here again, and today I'm on the floor again. You know what that means. It means that I forgot to put my life alert bracelet on this morning and fell over. Now I'm stuck here. But it also means that we're gonna check out another guitar cabinet. But this one is special because inside of this cab is what we're really here for. The brand new LCFR 150 speaker from Lichtlerm Audio and Fane. Let's do it. Why does my voice sound like that? Alright guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, my name is Kyle. What I do is I take all sorts of awesome high gain related guitar equipment, I record it with a simple setup, and I give you the unprocessed audio on your end. Boop. So if you're into E-standard thrash riffs, dropsy hardcore riffs, and dudes that try to compensate for their shortcomings as a human by buying more guitar equipment, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button, subscribing on your way out so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, super exciting day, and you actually knew that this day was coming because I recently demoed the Lichtlerm Audio Prometheus, an all new, high-powered, all-tube, modern-sounding monster of an amplifier. And in that video, not only did I mention that that amplifier was voiced around a brand new speaker from Lichtlerm Audio, but I also gave you a little tasty poo of it. Tasty poo. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. And I also told you that we were gonna take an in-depth look at this cabinet and speaker. So that's what we're doing today. Now before we get started, this is a sponsored video. Daniel has loaned me both the amplifier and the cabinet in order to share with you guys here on the channel, but he is paying me to do so. So feel free to take everything that I have to say with a massive grain of salt, because in the end, I am just a YouTube shill who doesn't even deserve to live. But I just wanted to let you guys know that in the sake of transparency, I'm still gonna give you my honest thoughts and opinions, so keep that in mind. All right guys, so let's jump into the details a little bit before we get into the sound samples. Number one, look at this thing. It is absolutely beautiful. I posted a picture of this cabinet in the head on my Instagram when I first brought it home, and I got a lot of comments on that picture about how awesome this amp and cab combination looks. One person even said that it was furniture grade guitar equipment, which I thought was really funny, but I mean, if you look at it, it definitely wouldn't be out of place in some like modern styled living rooms. But even with an awesome aesthetic, if something sounds terrible, who cares? Speaking about the cabinet itself, this cabinet is oversized not only in the width and height dimensions, but it's also deeper than pretty much every other 4x12 cab on the market. So this cab has a lot of internal volume, which means that it's going to have a bigger bass response. But sometimes when cabs are a little bit too large, they can sound kind of hollow, they can sound kind of woofy. And even though this cabinet with these speakers has a really punchy big bass response, it never sounds like that. It's got a nice balanced low end, and I think Daniel did a good job matching the cabinet to the speakers to avoid that. Moving on to the speaker itself, the LCFR is a pretty modern voice speaker in my opinion. It is definitely darker up top than pretty much every other Celestion speaker that I've ever tried. Celestions tend to be spiky in the highs and high mids pretty much across the board except for a few speakers, but the LCFR speaker is smoothed out a little bit. You may like that, you may not. I'm sure everybody and their brother is gonna compare this speaker to a vintage 30 because that's what we all essentially know and love as far as the metal community goes. But I can honestly say this speaker sounds nothing like a V30. It is very much its own thing, much in the way that the DV77 from Eminence and Omega is very much its own thing. This speaker has a very, very unique voicing, and you will know that as soon as you play through it. It does not sound anything like a vintage 30. So on top of that top end being smoothed out a little bit, the mids are kind of broadened out, and the low end on this speaker is not only massive, but it's extremely tight because of that 150 watt rating. This speaker has all the headroom you could ever need, so if you're tuning way down, that bass is gonna stay tight and intact. And the low end extension on the speaker is also better than most as well because it goes all the way down to 55 hertz, and all of those bass frequencies, they never get out of control. So if you're looking for a modern voiced metal speaker that's not overly bright on the top end and has really deep yet really tight lows with tons of headroom, this might be the speaker that you're looking for. So in a second, we'll pull the handle off, we'll take a look at the inside of the cabinet and the construction, and then after that, we'll jump into these sound samples. I've got 4 different high gain amplifiers, including the Lichtlerm Prometheus, but I've also got a Marshall, a PV, and a Mesa variant because those are very common high gain amplifiers. So you guys can hear what some of these classic amps sound like through a brand new speaker. I also am going to attempt to throw some different mics on the speakers as well. I've got a cool collection of microphones, but we're gonna stick to the most popular ones. Of course, the SM57 is gonna be in there, but I've got a Sennheiser MD421U, I've got a Royer R121 ribbon microphone, and I have a Beyerdynamic M160 ribbon microphone. So at some point in the video, we will cycle between all 4 of those microphones so that you guys can kind of hear how 4 industry standard microphones pick up the LCFR 150 speaker. And then finally, I'm gonna try to throw a ribbon mic, a VR1, somewhere around the room to pick up the room sound so that you guys can hear a little bit of the room sound. Yeah, all right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and let's check out the inside of this cab. All right, guys, so we are pulling the handle off. This cabinet has a recessed handle with the metal handle on the side, which I think is always a nice touch. I think usually when cab builders are willing to do the routing to make the handle kind of sink into the cab a little bit, that's just one of those fine details where you know they're gonna pay a lot of attention to detail and you're gonna get a quality product. I could be totally pulling that out of my ass, but I like it. So here we go. All right, inside of the cabinet, we've got a thick brace here, and everything, including the baffle, the rear panel, everything looks to be really nice, high quality birch. And that center brace is also connected to a thicker piece of plywood on the front baffle, so that's gonna stiffen the cab up a pretty good amount. And here are the speakers themselves, the LCFR 150. I believe that they look a little bit different now in their production form, because I think that these were actually kind of like prototypes. This was the cab that was shipped over to the US for NAMM. But yeah, as you guys can see, we got 4 of those speakers, and we've got some thick speaker wiring that is going to our parallel jacks here on the back. We've got a metal speaker jack plate on the back that has parallel inputs. And yeah, I think that's about all there is to say about the construction of this. Nothing crazy going on, just like I said, the speakers and the dimensions of the cab overall are kind of what sets this one apart. So it does look to be very well constructed though, in high quality birch. Let's button this baby back up and let's get to riffing. All right, guys, so I have the 4 amplifiers hooked up into the cab. We've got the microphones on the speakers, as I said we would. We've got an SM57, a Sennheiser MD421U, a Royer R121 ribbon microphone, and a Beyerdynamic M160 ribbon microphone. And then as far as our room microphone goes, you guys can't see it in any of the images, but we have an SE Electronics VR1 ribbon mic that'll pick up both front and rear of the mic, so it'll catch some of the reflections around the room, so you should get a good idea of how it sounds in the room. For most of this portion of the video, I will be using my PRS SE McCarty 594, and we will be in E flat tuning. And to show you the low end extension of these speakers, I'm actually gonna grab my Gallagher baritone towards the very end of the video and show you some really drop tune stuff. So we are actually gonna start on the PV5150 because this is an amplifier that I know that everybody who watches my channel is very familiar with. So I'm gonna hit you with a riff and we're gonna cycle through all 5 of the microphones and you guys can get an idea of how it sounds with each one. Here we go! right, so that's how it sounds through each one of the individual microphones. So if you're familiar with how those mics sound on a V30 with a 5150, I think that you will definitely be in agreement that these speakers sound absolutely nothing like a vintage 30. It's literally given the 5150 a voice that I have never heard it sound like before. Yeah, I've never heard a 5150 sound like this before. There's kind of like this guttural growl going on with this speaker, and the upper mids are definitely way smoothed out. They're more smooth, they're more modern. The top end is absolutely there, and there's actually a good bit of top end detail, but it's not harsh whatsoever. So really, really interesting sounding speaker that definitely doesn't sound like anything else out there, at least as far as I'm aware. And I have pretty much all of the speakers. So I lied. We're actually gonna grab the baritone now while we're on the 5150 because that is the best amp to do so. Alright, so as you can see, the low end frequencies go very, very low on this speaker. It seems to be reproducing pretty much all the low end that the guitar can give it. It's really pushing it out. It's staying really, really tight. We're loud in the room, so it's not really falling apart with volume, even though the depth of the cab, it's big, it's a bigger internal volume.
That's what I'm trying to say.
The cab has an increased internal volume compared to most other cabs on the market, and the low end, while it's big and it's punchy, it's not falling apart. It's not overly woofy. So really, really cool. Great design so far, Daniel. But let's go back to standard. Let's kick it on with a Marshall JCM 900. I don't know why I'm talking like this. Dude, okay, so it's not my favorite speaker for the 900 voicing wise, but it definitely modernizes the amp far more than I've ever heard it sound through any other cab, and the low end. Insanely punchy. So with the Marshall voicing, might be a little bit modern. Your tastes obviously will probably vary from mine, but it definitely adds a nice low end punch, and the mids are very, very barky without being harsh. So really cool. Let's move on to the rectifier. The low end response of these speakers is awesome. Definitely my favorite part about the speakers in cab is just the low end is just so punchy, it's so percussive, there's so much headroom, it stays together super, super well. Honestly, out of all the amps that I've tried with this cab so far, rectifier definitely takes the cake for me because of the top end sizzle and aggressiveness that it has. The speakers in the cab kind of balance that out just enough to where it's still there, it's still very prevalent, but it's not overwhelming like it might be on a vintage 30 loaded cab. Like, it's really, really well balanced. I'm a fan of that. So finally, last but not least, let's check it out on the amp that the speakers in the cab were designed for, the Prometheus. All right, it is super clear that these speakers were designed for the Prometheus amplifier because that, by far and away, sounded the best. It was the most balanced, the frequencies were in the right place, and they made an awesome pair. Not only did these speakers kind of bring out the low end that I felt like the Prometheus was kind of missing on a V30 cab, but it made it super punchy, super percussive. It made it super percussive. Lots of top end richness. Like, it was bright, but it wasn't harsh. Like, all the mids were coming forward so much better with the Prometheus than with some of the other amplifiers. So definitely a match. LCFR. Hell, get it? Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time.
You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.